Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 9. Today we'll be talking about how to get the perfect lighting for your photos. Let's get right into it. Okay, so we already know what exposure is. Exposure is how bright or how dark your image is going to be. And the good thing about shooting with iPhone is that you don't usually have to worry about exposure at all. The iPhone tends to do a really good job in determining the correct brightness for your photo. However, exposure isn't just about the darkness or brightness of your image, it can also be used as a creative tool. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can take advantage of exposure to create more interesting, more unique iPhone photos. Let's begin. Now, when we're talking about exposure, one of the key concepts you have to understand is dynamic range. So dynamic range is essentially the range of light in your photo, starting from the darkest part of your photo, all the way to the brightest part. Now, the human eye is really good at processing dynamic range. So you can look at a really dark object and next to it you can have a really bright object and the human eye doesn't have any problems processing that scene. Everything will look just right to you. But cameras are built a bit differently. Any differences in light that you have in the scene tend to get amplified when you take a photo, and because of that you'll often get stronger shadows or brighter highlights, which are the brightest part of the image when you take a photo, and the HDR function of the iPhone, which stands for High Dynamic Range, is essentially how the iPhone tries to address the situation. So if you're shooting your photos with HDR on, which I do recommend on all the latest iPhone models, then you're going to see that the iPhone actually tries to match the dynamic range in the photo to what your eye would see. In other words, the iPhone does everything in its power to essentially eliminate the difference between the darkest and brightest parts of the image. That can be a great thing, and in fact for around 95% of photos that you take, that's what you want. However, sometimes you can actually create even more interesting, more creative photos if you try to amplify that difference between the brightest and the darkest part of your image. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. But before we do, I'm going to quickly go into the settings and I'm going to open camera settings. And from here, you'll see we have the Smart HDR slider at the bottom of the screen. Now, 99% of the time, I recommend that you keep Smart HDR on. It's a great feature and it ensures that you get a good exposure where the darkest parts of the image aren't too dark and the brightest parts aren't too bright. But what if that's exactly what you're trying to show in your photo? What if that's what you want the image to be about? Well, if that's your creative goal, then it's best if we disable Smart HDR for the specific shoot only. So that's what I'm going to do. But now let's open up the camera app and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So if you look at the viewfinder of the iPhone, you'll see that I have this big kind of V-shape of light in the middle of the frame, and it surrounds this beautiful door in the old town. Now we're shooting this video in late afternoon in the old town of Riga. What's happening today is that it's a sunny day, so there aren't any clouds in the sky. And for a shoot like this, that's actually a good thing, because on a sunny day, we can get these really bright illuminated areas, and next to those we have some really dark, really deep shadows. That's the kind of setup we have here, but unfortunately it's not really what you see on the screen. Because the iPhone is actually trying to avoid that. It wants to give me an even exposure where nothing is too dark or too bright. So if I want to get a more dramatic exposure, where the shadows are darker and where the difference between the darkest and the lightest parts of the image are more contrasted, I'm going to start by disabling HDR altogether. So at the bottom right hand corner you'll see that I now have an HDR control. By default it's on. But if I tap my finger there, you'll see that the HDR letters are now crossed out. And that essentially means that HDR is no longer enabled. So here we are in an interesting location, and there are two things that make this place special. First of all, we're standing here above everyone else. So the stairs lead down into a tunnel, but we're standing here at the top. So when people are walking past us, we get to look at them from above. And that, in of itself, is a better vantage point. It's not what you typically see, and that makes it more interesting in photos. Now, the second thing that's really working for us here is that the sun hits that opposite wall at an angle. And because of that, whenever someone walks up or down these stairs, they cast a big, prominent shadow on that wall opposite of us. So I think that we have all the right ingredients here for a really interesting shadow photo. Now, if I'm really interested in those shadows, then I need to really emphasize them as much as possible. And that's a job for exposure. So first of all, if we frame this up, we definitely don't want to be using HDR, so the HDR is still turned off. As you can see at the bottom right hand corner of the frame, if HDR was on, those shadows wouldn't be as prominent because the iPhone would strive for a balanced exposure, but that's not what we want here. Instead, we want the kind of exposure where we have bright highlights and dark shadows. That way, those shadows are really going to stand out. But what else can we do to make those shadows even more prominent? Well, we could decrease exposure. And if that's what we do, then the shadows are going to be darker and they're going to stand out even more. Now there are two ways to do that. One is using the exposure compensation slider, which is only available on the latest models of iPhone. And the second is by locking focus and exposure, which is a tool that we utilized in the previous lesson, if you can remember. So I'm going to frame up the shot and you'll see that we already have some shadows there on the wall opposite of us. So that rectangular shadow is cast by a road sign, and you can use that as a preview of what the other shadows in the photo are going to look like. I'm going to tap and hold my finger on that opposite wall outside of the shadow, and you'll see that now it says AEAF lock, which means that we've locked both focus and exposure on that opposite wall. Now another thing you're going to notice is that little sun icon next to the focus rectangle. If I tap my finger on that little sun and gently drag it down just a little bit, you'll see that the image got even darker, and specifically those shadows got darker. This is how I can further adjust the exposure. If I were to drag the sun up, the image would get brighter. If I drag the sun down, the image gets darker. And that's what I want for this shot, where my goal is to emphasize those shadows. So now that we have our exposure locked, we're ready to start shooting. And in a situation like this, the best thing I can do is once again, just stand here and wait for people to come through to frame. Now, a lot of times it won't work out, but sometimes it will, and when that happens, we should be able to get a really interesting shadow image. So we're going to stay here with focus and exposure locked, and whenever people are walking past us, we'll be ready to take a shot. Now there's an older lady coming in from the left, so I'll make sure to get that shadow. I think this could potentially be a really interesting shot, so let's take a look. And indeed, it turned out the way we hoped. We have the shadow of this old lady, and that shadow is positioned perfectly between that other shadow on the left and that blue sign on the right. And it's really good that it's in the middle. It makes for a more pleasing composition. Also, what I really like here is that we have the strong shadow, but we don't see the old lady. So we don't really know where the shadow is coming from, and that to me creates a really interesting, mysterious shot. So that's it for the lesson. I really hope you enjoyed, and we're almost to the end of the course, so if you're still here, great job to you. As always, I encourage you to get outside and apply what you've learned today to your photos. For today, I encourage you to get a really cool shadow looking photo like we accomplished in this video. And you can do that by doing two things. You can disable your HDR first, and then use that sun icon to adjust the exposure to get really prominent shadows. Anyway, just a little side note, credits to iPhone Photography School for providing the footage today, as I wasn't really able to go outside much and be able to bring my laptop here to film out in the sun too long, so credits to them for providing the footage. Other than that, have a great day.